This is session 1 of Law Society's 2016 Return to Work programme. Welcome to session 1 of our Return to Work programme. I'm Keith O'Malley with the Law Society Career Support Service. Hi. This video is one in a series of 4 that looks at the whole area of return to work and how solicitors can do well in this regard. By return to work, we have in mind solicitors who've been out of formalised work for some time because of other responsibilities, for example, looking after family members, but who now want to return to work and most probably back to legal work. A booklet accompanies this video and 2 points are made on the front insert sheet which are worth noting. The first is that this programme is intended to operate alongside rather than instead of other Law Society career supports. So you are recommended to avail of services that are available, things like the one-to-one career consultations, our CV review and feedback service. Also, it's important to note that there's a whole range of booklets available from career support that can help you. 2 are worth noting. The first is this one here, In-House and Corporate Public Sector Employment Guide. This is really vital reading for anyone who is looking at opportunities outside of practice. The second one is a guide to setting up legal practice or partnership, and what's happened in recent years is it's become much easier to both set up a practice and to purchase a practice, and if this is something that you want to think about or consider, this guide is really important. Both of these booklets, along with a whole range of others, are available from Career Support. All you need to do is contact us and ask us to send you one out, and we'll do that. You can contact us by phoning our direct dial number, which is 0188 15766, or by emailing us. Our email address is very easy to remember. There it is there, careers@lawsociety.ie. There is some preparatory work that we'd ask you to do really almost in advance of doing the rest of this programme. And there's it amounts to watching 2 videos which you can access on YouTube. The first is one by a presentation by a lady called Pamela Weinberg on success strategies for women re-entering the workforce, and it's very worthwhile. And the second one is a TED talk by a guy called Robert Greene called The Key to Transforming Yourself. I think both have a lot to offer people who are in a return to work situation. Now, what we're going to cover in session 1 today, we're going to look at regulatory responsibilities, we're going to look at upskilling resources, we're going to look at today's job market and how people in return to work situations should feature within it. We're going to look at return to work challenges, and we're going to finish up by making some kind of proposals in terms of where you should, where you might begin your return to work efforts. So we're going to go straight in and look at regulatory responsibilities. A solicitor in a return to work situation needs to be mindful of 3 things really in terms of regulatory responsibilities. First are their responsibilities in terms of professional conduct, and this guide here is first class in that regard. So if you can get a copy of this guide, read it and be absolutely familiar with everything in it. If you've got any queries, if you contact us in Career Support, we can get an answer to whatever query you've got with regard to professional conduct. If you get a job, you're required to notify the registration section of the Regulation Department of the Law Society, and a part of that, of course, is then taking out a practicing cert. If you have been not working for a period of time, over 2 years, you will probably be required to fill out a Section 61 form. And this form is considered by the Regulation of Practice Committee, and the whole idea is to ensure that solicitors who have been out of the swim for a while have kept up to date with legal matters and are have kept up to date with latest legal developments. So sometimes we're asked, can I fill out a Section 61 form ahead of time, ahead of getting a practicing cert to see how I fare? Unfortunately, this isn't possible. You fill it out when you go to get a practicing cert. Moving on, we're going to look at the whole area of upskilling resources. Resources available to people who want to upskill and either make sure that their skills are up to date now, or sometimes acquire some new skills in legal skills and legal knowledge. The Law Society has two different teams involved in education and training at a post-qualified level. There is the Law Society Professional Training, and they're primarily involved in CPD, continual professional development type courses, and the kind of training that is appropriate for CPD requirements. A big initiative on their part in the last few years have been cluster events, which are events that take place over one day. They're done in association with bar associations, and they tend to be provide very, very good value and a great opportunity to meet a range of colleagues, because they tend to be events that are attended by 100 plus, sometimes maybe 200 solicitors in total. So something that you should watch out for. Diploma courses are operated by the diploma team, and they tend to be over a period of weeks and months, and have exams at the end, and with certification to either certified or diploma level. The range of courses that are available there you can access on the website, the Law Society website. Another option a lot of solicitors in a return to work situation are interested in is the whole area of online courses, and there are online courses available, and they provide very good value. The only problem is most of them tend to be quite focused on technology matters rather than legal matters, but that is changing, and you should keep an eye on those. A really useful option is this one here, or booklets like this one here. The student manuals are available at a relatively inexpensive price. This one costs €60, and they have the most up-to-date information about regulations, about practices and forms being used at the moment. So these are really a great way of getting up to date with skills. Are there any others? Yes, there are. There's a whole range of other resources that you can avail of in order to upskill. For example, there's an awful lot of these are free of charge. Government bodies, human rights organisations, all of these kind of organisations are all the time organising events where information is provided and updating information is provided. And it's a good idea to keep an eye out for ones that are of interest to you. The Law Society, or the Legal Vacancies newsletter, it tends to list upcoming events like these. So it's a good idea to make sure that you receive the Legal Vacancies newsletter, and that you keep an eye on events coming up that might be of interest to you. Now let's go on and consider today's job market and how events within the job market, how they affect people in a return to work situation. Portfolio careers are an interesting development. This is this whole idea of people not just working one job, but maybe having a few different areas of activities. They might work 2 or 3 days a week, with an employer, but they might then do some lecturing on a part-time basis, do consultancy, say in some other company. They might be involved in a voluntary capacity with, a not-for-profit. So their work is made up of a number of different occupations or a number of different involvements, and that's the way they work. Now, this kind of development is really great news for people in a return to work situation, because so often people in a return to work situation don't want to go back and work, a 40-hour week, 9 to 5:30 every day. And this idea of working, taking on a particular responsibility in an organisation and maybe other responsibilities elsewhere tend to suit people in a return to work situation. Another big development in the last 2 decades has been a casual employment. Employers are very reluctant to hire people on permanent full-time contracts. They think much more now about, well, the work that they have and getting that work done. So what they like to do is hire people in on a project basis. We need something done here, and they look for somebody to do that job. So often, once the relationship has been established, that person stays on and does lots of other things and ends up so often in a permanent full-time job. But the nice thing about starting on a casual basis with an employer is you can decide, you can fashion the work according to the way you want it. So if you get in contact with an employer who needs something done and you say, yes, I can do that for you, but I'm going to start at 10 o'clock every day, or I'm going to finish at 4 o'clock every day, or I'm going to work 3 days a week, they'll tend to accept that, and say, well, that's fine, we just want the work done. But as the relationship develops, then you don't have to come back on that and kind of fit into some kind of a traditional 9-to-5 job. So casual employment is a great way of getting your foot in on your terms into an employer, and the trick then is to maintain that and not to give on those as you settle down into a more permanent relationship with that employer. Work-life balance, there's been a lot of changes. Employers quite simply have had to get much more flexible in terms of giving people space to look after a family, both male and female people, because with two people working in relationships, it's important that employers are flexible. So this is again good news for people in a return to work situation. Flexibility has become a big issue, mainly convenienced and facilitated by the developments that have happened within communications and IT technology. So you can quite simply now operate from home, from the car, from your mobile phone. So this has tended to open up the whole idea and the recognition that people can do work from home and don't necessarily have to be in the office 9 to 5 every day. And this is something that is a big benefit to people in a return to work situation. There are hot sectors. We looked at the booklet earlier about in-house. In-house has been, for instance, has been a huge growth area, and it's one that people in a return to work situation shouldn't forget about. So, what challenges face solicitors who are in a return to work situation? Are there particular things that solicitors need to get over in order to get themselves organised in work? Well, a lot of these tend to be, quite internal matters. The first big problem, the one that causes most grief, is uncertainty. We would all like to know that, okay, you're going back to work and you're going back to that firm that you used to work in, where you had a very happy relationship and everything is going to be the same as it was before. But that doesn't tend to be the case. If for no other reason you're different, your priorities have probably changed quite a lot since you last worked. And part of the horror of return to work is dealing with the uncertainty and kind of trying to get your head around what exactly are my skills, what have I got to offer, what employers are looking for, those kind of things. And so you've got to, in as far as you can, try and master uncertainty. And one good way of doing this that we would recommend is to, for matters that you have control over, take control of those, and for other matters that really you've got no control over, don't worry about them. Just don't let them upset you or whatever. So focus on things that you've got control over and take control of them in as far as you can. And other matters, just let them go, you know. Limiting assumptions are a real problem. I have a sign on my office wall that kind of sums up the main career challenge that everybody tends to have, and it's it's not what we are that holds us back, it's what we think we are not. This is a huge issue for people in a return to work situation, because, you know, if you spent the last few years at home, your sense of your self-confidence tends to be compromised somewhat, and so often people just quite simply you know, are not carrying themselves with the kind of confidence that they have, and they almost bind themselves or, you know, restrict themselves by self-limiting beliefs. So it's not what we are that holds us back, it's what we think we are not. Something you should think about. Skill deficits, if somebody has been working for 10 years maybe in law, they may feel that there is a particular skill deficit, or if they're seeking to move into a new area of law that they haven't done before, they may feel that they have a skill deficit. And if that's the case, we've already looked at resources that you can access, and there's a wide range of ways that you can address skill deficits. However, I would encourage you not to you know, let them become a limiting assumption and say, you know, where you're saying, oh, I can't talk to employers, I can't do this, I can't do that because, you know, I'm short on experience. Levels of appointment can be a bit of a disappointment sometimes to people in a return to work situation. You're not necessarily going to be able to go back straight away to the same level of working that you were doing before. Salary can you know, be a similar problem. You may find yourself you know, being offered a lower salary than what you were working before. But so often your people in a return to work situation, their priorities have changed. So you've got to get that balance right between you know, that age-old work-life balance in terms of what do I want now from my life generally, and how does you know, the whole matter of work fit in with that. Home infrastructure can be a bit of a challenge for some people in a return to work situation. If you can access the kind of job where you're being allowed, you know, do work from home, first thing you've got to do is line up your phone, your PC or whatever, so that it can link in with your employer's system. But you know, if you've got children around the house, noise can be a bit of a challenge if you need to spend time on the phone. So that's something that people in a return to work situation sometimes have to address, but it is something that you can get over and move on and resolve. Which leads us on to where to begin. You know, what should you do now in order to get the ball rolling with regard to return to work? Well, what we would say is the important thing to do is to set some kind of an objective, a broad objective. I want to get back to work, and then you start researching the kind of what you think you want to do, and what kind of new opportunities maybe have opened up since you last worked, and all of those other things. And do this as far as you can by talking to people, peers, and people you worked with in the past, and you set yourself an action plan. So what we're going to do now is look at that first two points in terms of setting your objective and doing some research into what you want to do. What we'll be doing in session 2 in the next video is we're going to be looking more at developing an action plan. So the first thing we would say is what is a good idea, a good place to start, is to consider what suits you. So you review the skills and interests you have, you consider your priorities and values. So often people in a return to work situation, their values have shifted quite significantly from the last time they worked, and you've got to give consideration for this. A good way of doing that are using of assessment tools. There are a lot of online assessment tools available, things like skills assessments, other interest evaluators, and by doing a number of those, you can get a sense of where you are in terms of what's important for you now. Another good idea is this one about the board of directors directors. This is where you assemble a group of people who know you, who have your best interest at heart, and you use them both on, sometimes maybe on a group, but more often than not on an individual basis. You talk to them, you tell them about your latest thoughts, your plans, you get feedback from them. There are times that you'll also be able to get help from them. So a board of directors is a very, very useful idea. Are there any others? There's a whole range of other things that you can do in order to figure out what suits you. And if you think about that kind of challenge, you'll come up with a range of different things that you can do. The second thing you need to do then, having started thinking about what suits you, you need to look at what options you have in front of you. A good place to start is, what's your ideal opportunity? What do you want to spend your time doing? Over the long term. Sometimes that takes a bit of time, and sometimes you need to take some stepping stones to get to that place. So that's something that you should think about. There may well be opportunities within the job market that didn't exist when you last worked, and you should look at that, and you should consider, are there new opportunities that have come up that could well be of interest to you. Short-term possibilities are a great area of opportunity for people in a return to work situation. What we're talking about here is where an employer wants some job done on a short-term basis, a project work, for example, and you say, yes, I'll come in and do that, and I'll do it over the next 2 months. And you build a relationship with that employer. You also get, an up-to-date experience in a particular line of work. So you can go on from having done that project to do further work for that employer, or do similar kind of work for other employers. It's a great way of feeling your way, and as opposed to getting going straight into a 9-to-5 job, permanent position where everything is set out, and suddenly you can find yourself with responsibilities that you didn't quite anticipate. Other possibilities, there are a whole range of work opportunities for solicitors, both in law and also outside law, and people in a return to work situation quite often, for different reasons, find that actually it suits them not to take on the traditional kind of legal job that they did before, but to do something different. People go off and they work for not-for-profits, and a whole range of other maybe policy and advocacy type roles that they haven't done in the past, and they're something that you can look at and consider. So what you're aiming to do out of this is to draw up an objective statement that says, well, this is what I am hoping to do. And the good thing about this is that it tends to then guide you thereafter. It also serves as a GPS. So if you start drifting off and start thinking about other things, your objective statement tends to anchor you and bring you back. So it very much defines who you are and who you want to become, and it structures and prioritizes your time. So we're coming to the end of session 1, and what we're going to do is quickly recap on the matters covered. We looked at regulatory responsibilities, we looked at upskilling resources, we looked at today's job market and what it's like, we looked at return to work challenges that face people in a return to work situation, and we came up with some proposals in terms of where you might begin, where you might get things going. There's a little bit of homework we have for you. What I would ask you to do is to read the You and You article, which is in the booklet. Also, there's 2 videos, one by Scott Dinsmore on how to find and do the work that you love, and another one by Adam Braun. He comes up with 5 proposals, 5 pointers for a person's career, for their life really, and they're actually included in the booklet as well, and they're useful. And then what I'm going to ask you to do is to, if it's appropriate and if you feel you should do them, is to do the 2 workbooks that are contained within the the booklet. The first is consider your what suits you, this one here, and then the second one is, of course, consider your options. So if you could complete both of those, that would be great. That's the end of session 1 now. I look forward to talking to you again in session 2 when we're going to move on more into doing the work necessary in order to do an action plan and completing that action plan. Bye.